Hi, my name's Cheese, and welcome to another Bonesweeper Progress Update video. If you haven't heard of Bonesweeper before, you can check out this other video for an overview, but the TLDR is, it's Minesweeper, but you're digging up fossils, and you get to build skeletons out of the stuff that you find. For the second half of August, most of my attention has been going towards improving avatar presence and movement, while the first half of September has primarily gone towards miscellaneous features aimed at enabling future work. I've been intending for a while to revisit character movement and separate it out from the initial character controller I'd written for the museum mockup last year. I started by adding a mouse-driven interface that's similar to what might be found in a traditional point-and-click adventure, using raycasts against ground mesh to set waypoints for the avatar to walk to. And once that was working, I rewrote keyboard and gamepad controls to just move the current waypoint around. This all means that the remaining character movement doesn't need to know or care whether waypoints are being controlled by input or something else, allowing me to reuse that in other parts of the game. I've updated the sound effect loading code to use the same user folder override behavior that the music and JSON files have. I also added a button that will make the game reload sound files and relevant JSON at runtime, which should make it easier to tweak and iterate quickly. Logging has had a long overdue cleanup. I've updated most of the game's print and print-er calls to indicate class, subsystem, or context it's from or related to. If nothing else, it makes logs much more pleasant to read. I also tracked down some memory leaks that I've been putting off for a while. Godot's automatic freeing of resource instances keeps a counter of in-scope references to each instance and frees it when the count reaches 0. Dig tile and assembly chunk classes both have references to adjacent tiles and chunks that I wasn't clearing, which turned out to be the primary source of leaks. I wrote some code for generating pop-up dialog UIs from a set of definitions, and now display one at startup the first time the game is run, to allow players to decide whether they want to opt in to checking whether or not the game is running a current build. The version check is based on similar implementations in my other games, where the game downloads a JSON file from the game's website that contains some version information and a brief changelog summary that can be shown on the main menu. The player's avatar now walks around the dig site using the new movement code, vaguely guided by the position of the cursor. I'm hoping that this gives the impression of the avatar being present and involved, rather than being directly controlled by the player. Eventually they'll have animations that respond to the player's actions, but for now it's just nice to have them around. The dig phase now has an end screen that summarizes the dig site and has the camera slowly pass over everything. Eventually this will tally up the player's found fossils and handle the transition back to the map phase, but it already provides some nice delineation between gameplay phases. Like the dig phase, the player's avatar now has more presence in the assembly warehouse, standing below falling fossils and turning to inspect items on the shelves when sorting or stashing. Again, this is all about ensuring that the avatar feels present rather than having it being directly controlled by players. The first time the assembly phase is visited, I use the new pop-up dialog system to present the player with a choice of action mode or puzzle mode. In my mind, the real-time nature of the assembly phase and its juxtaposition against the turn-based nature of digging is a key part of the experience, but I understand that that's not going to be a good fit for all players, and helping those who won't enjoy action mode avoid it is going to be better for everyone. The assembly phase now has some placeholder reverb. I've externalized the bus reverb effect settings into a config file to make it easier to tweak and give the right sense of space and scale while the game is running. I've popped an end screen in here too, and as with the dig phase, it currently provides a temporary summary, but eventually this will be the point at which the contents of Misc fossils are revealed. I've added the avatar into the map phase along with a nice armchair. I don't have a sitting animation just yet, so for now they just stand around. I refactored the specimen selector I mentioned in the last video to be more generic, and now it can be used to add skeletons to be tracked during the map phase. Automatically adding everything on the HUD works when there's only 4 different types of skeletons, but that won't scale. Looking ahead, I'm planning to also give extra emphasis to dig sites on the globe that have a chance of containing a tracked skeleton. While working to add the new character controller to the museum, I decided to replace the generated room with a modelled one to start to establish the requirements for the rooms that will ship with the game. I created something using the layout of the mock-up museum I made last year, and quickly discovered that directional lights make walls cast shadows into the room, which just feels wrong. I want to give players some control over lighting, and spotlights make sense for that, so I've put some placeholder spotlights in. After spending some time tweaking and getting things looking right, I decided to turn off global illumination and get a feel for what changes I would have to make in order to approximate those settings if I added an option to disable it. I discovered that it had been disabled all along, and since it looks good enough, global illumination seems redundant for Bonesweeper's needs, which is good news for minimum system requirements. A very big thank you to the supporters going by on screen at the moment. Their support has helped me eat while making this game, and I am so very appreciative. A special thanks also to new supporter Tim Dawson. A huge thanks also to Screen Tasmania, who supported this project with a small grant at the end of last year. I mentioned in the last video that the game wasn't as far behind my initial projections as I previously thought. I find it a lot easier to talk about timelines in retrospect, so I'll be circling back to cover this in more detail in a future video. But for now though, I've negotiated revised delivery dates with Screen Tasmania, and tightened Bonesweeper's scope a little by letting go of some planned features such as the museum room editing that I mentioned a couple of videos back. These things are a pretty normal part of managing a project, and I think the game's going to be stronger for it in the long run. To allow me to be more focused on other aspects of the game without sacrificing sound effects, I've also decided to bring Jasmine Serrano on board to help out. Jasmine and I collaborated on In the Snowy Winter's Wake, and I am delighted to be working with her again. It's still very early, but we've worked out an asset list to move forward with, and I've added some small features that will allow her to make audio changes and test new sounds without waiting for me to do new builds. Anyway, that's about it for today. If you'd like to keep track of development or try the playable prototype, you can find some links in the description. If you're super keen to try out what we've talked about here today, I make early test builds available to my Patreon supporters. Thanks for watching, and goodbye!